That's been doing well. I like to check our actual website.
Patrick said he'll be here right at 6, is what he told me, so he must be on his way.
But they're very nice. And you love them.
Yours is not? Uh-oh. Hold on.
Get the button thing.
For the button?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's 6:01 p.m. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. It's June 16th, 2025, and this is our budget workshop. Lori, can I get roll call?
Mayor Young,
Here.
Vice Mayor Sartori,
Here.
Councilmember French,
Here.
Councilmember Brandon,
Here.
Member Painter.
Here.
Thank you. All right, and I will hand it off to Manager Allen to go through the budget presentation.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we have our first look at the budget for the 25-26. This is pretty rough. It usually is this first presentation. Go through it, try to be brief but thorough. And so if there's something you miss or have a quick question, let me know. I think most of the questions, if we can reserve those for the end, I can try to get through it pretty quick and we can always come back if needed. So with that, some of this is stuff that we went over. Each year we are required to set a budget and the maximum ad valorem tax rate, which you guys will set in July, and you can always go down, just can't go up. Types of funds that we have, this is more of a reminder. We have the general fund, which is most of our service, like police, fire, parks, planning, finance, IT, administration. And we have our enterprise funds, water utility, stormwater utility, refuse and recycling. A couple internal service funds. One that we set up last year was a vehicle replacement fund. We have a dedicated slide for what vehicles we plan on replacing this year. And then the capital improvement fund, we have two capital improvement funds. We have the 301 fund, which is funded from the surtax, the 1 cent penny sales tax, which is sunsetting in December. We typically collect $650,000. We're only expecting to collect $154,000, then it will sunset. So if you can imagine the hole that'll be in our budget moving forward with capital improvement fund, that's one of them. We have a water utility tax that also funds that fund. We collect around $270,000 a year in that fund. $135,000 we're going to be transferring the stormwater. We talked a little bit about that in the strategic planning workshop. That's the way we've done it in this budget. Second capital projects fund is the 303 fund. This fund is funded mostly through general fund, or it is funded through general fund revenues, and we'll go over the details of that $2.5 million. We also have the building fund and special law enforcement fund. Couple items that are outstanding to just kind of keep an eye on the next month or so. The certified ad valorem taxes, we have the estimate they give us in June. July 1st, they will give us our certified values. And then we also are still working through our final health insurance numbers. Right now, we have a budget placeholder of 12% increase, and we'll detail that in a minute. Final property and casualty insurance, PBA contract negotiations are ongoing. The CWA and non-union salaries, we need to kind of touch those up. You guys got a presentation on the non-union salaries at the last meeting that we had from our consultant. Just some of the highlights from the 24-25. We've done a lot of good things for the village. These are just a few. We'd have a lot more slides, double the slides if we talked about all the good things that were going on in Tequesta. But Remembrance Park Phase 1, I got dirt on my shoes from being out there today. It's coming along really well. I think right around the first week in July, we're going to be talking about a ribbon cutting. So we haven't finalized that date yet, but that is coming to conclusion soon. Sidewalk improvement program, $170,000. We do have those improvements underway. $770,000 for road maintenance program. Just some of the policy things that we've done throughout the year. Tequesta Park maintenance, pickleball court maintenance, field maintenance. We are in progress of removing the dugouts that are not ADA compliant out there at Tequesta Park. And then state appropriation, we just signed the agreement for the $340,000 for park planning. Other highlights, we have successfully migrated 365 to the village. That was a big project and it was costly, but we are through that. Council chambers upgrades, I think we'll say that's in progress still. Hopefully we'll iron out most of the kinks. Mobility planning, we should see the final mobility plan in August for council approval. As you guys know, that was partially grant funded. We established a vehicle replacement fund, new K9 this year. The PD did receive new computers in their cars. New community programs with the gun safety course and boater safety course, been a big hit for both of those. And then electronic knock boxes for the fire department and fire department trailer. This talks a little bit about the budget process, and I will take a minute just to stop here and just thank the staff for all the work that they've done. The budget cycle, it doesn't just start in March or April, it goes year round. And so we really have two budget processes going on. The current one that we're in, continuing to maintain and purchase and do all the things that go with it, and then start the new process. So the process really never stops around the village, and I think our staff and just do a good job being good stewards of the money, and our directors put in a lot of time, and especially finance and Jeff and their team for help put together. So just want to thank them. July, we do set the maximum tax rate, millage rate at the council meeting. You can always go down, but you can't go up. And then in August, we'll set the non-ad valorem will be set, and that's refuse and recycling and stormwater. We are proposing a 6.4595, which is the millage rate that we currently have. So we're not, that's our recommendation, is to keep the millage rate the same. Just the next slide will kind of show the history of our millage rate, whether it was us going down or other taxing entities. We have a very steady decline in millage rate. We did in 2020, had a little bit of a bump, but everything else has been going down. So, we think we've done really good with keeping our millage rate steady and stable. With the current tax millage rate the way it is, 2.9% increase for homesteaded properties. And so if you take a look at what that means for the average homeowner, $600,000, that's $109 a year, roughly about $9 a month for an increase. This slide represents where we stand in Palm Beach County compared to the other municipalities. 39, we're right in the middle, 22. The ones in blue and yellow, those are the municipalities that have their own police and fire, just to give a comparison, because you can have a low tax rate, right? But if you don't provide the services that we provide, so it allows us to kind of compare against the others. So 9 municipalities have their own police and fire. Of those 9, 7 of them have their own police, fire, and water department. And so we're one of the 7 in Palm Beach County, and I think we take a lot of pride in that. This is the general fund relative size by department. So you'll see out of all the numbers up there, it kind of gives the relative percentage. Most of our budgets come from police or fire. 49% is public safety. So I think you'll see that we've taken a value to public safety in the village over the years, and I think it shows in the general fund. This relative to that same $600,000 is kind of going back to that other side, that $3,555. If you take that same, the average homeowner is paying this much for service for each of these departments. So if you look at fire, or let's say police, $821 a year for police services, which works out to $2.25 a day for police services, and for fire services, it's $251 a day. For all of our service in the village, you can pay under $10 a day for all of our service. So I think we do a very good job of trying to maintain the budget and the millage rate the way it is, and provide a great value for our residents. This is the relative change per fund, and we have some details to go into this, but these are the changes from year to year. And then this is the expenditures by department, the changes in the expenditures by department. You'll see that most of the expenses, or the increase in expenses, are coming from police, fire, or public works. And we have some details of some of those expenditures. As you guys know, the police and fire contracts and the salaries have went up, and so that's a big part of that. And then I can detail some of the public works increases with some of the projects we're doing. Just the highlights of the general fund, property tax revenue is up 7.91%, mainly due to sales and new construction. Homestead property increase is capped at 2.9%. The sales tax, we've kept it pretty steady in this budget. We kept knowing what the state's doing, and I know some of that's getting ironed out right now at the state, probably as we speak, or tonight. So we haven't estimated a lot for sales tax, and I think in the future we'll have discussions about what property tax will look like, but we've been pretty conservative with that. Leisure services, as you guys know, we did a budget amendment. We are seeing increased usage of the facility through our program, so that's a change from last year to this year. We're estimating an additional $51,000 in revenue. And then our transport services, we switched over to a third-party biller, and we've seen significant increases in revenue. We're expecting an additional $80,000 just from that service. Some of the expenditures, proposing increase in $98,000 for technology improvements. There's a huge threat landscape within the state or even the nation. And so Brad and what his team does an amazing job. So we do have some increases in technology. I know that there's one of our contracts over a 3-year period. We're paying it up front, so that's a little bit of the balance there. And we also have some revenue that's associated with those expenditures that Brad does a good job working with the state to get some funds. The $710,000 for street improvements, $170,000 for sidewalk improvements. We're continuing with those. We are proposing to meet the strategic plan. There's the next couple items, meet that. We're proposing a $1.3 million construction using reserves for Remembrance Park. And then $100,000 using reserves for Old Dixie beautification. We have a plan for Station 11 to improve that, but the first step in that is to provide a recreation maintenance facility. Most of our equipment used to be behind the old YMCA building. When we move over to the new building, we move all of our equipment over to Station 11. So we need to be able to put that equipment somewhere. After we do that, relocate those, the building department and the police department through the Special Law Enforcement Fund is going to fix that building up and make it usable and hopefully improve the facade over there. And then the concert series, Greg is proposing a $35,000 for the concert series. He is going to offset some of that with $35,000 revenue. This will be in exchange of the food truck event. We've had some troubles in participation from the food truck vendors. We think this will be a good addition and a good change to have a concert series over at the park. It'll still be 4 or 5 times a year, just like the food trucks that we had. Some of the other expenditures, health insurance increase, we have a placeholder of 12%. They gave us a quote or an estimate anywhere between 8 and 16%. We chose to have a placeholder of 12%. That's a $268,000 increase. Police officer salaries, we have an offer to the PBA of 13%. That's a $280,000 increase to the budget. Firefighter salaries for year 2 is $145,000. And then the 5% that you guys got a presentation from the consultant was $170,000. We are proposing adding a police officer this year. As you guys remember, when one of our officers moved over to DEA, we've kind of left a gap in one of our shifts. We've been able to manage that. It does put a little stress on our officers, especially when we have some out on either FMLA or sick or vacations. And so we are proposing to bring the shifts back to fully staffed on all 4 shifts. This is just a little a slide that I thought would be good to show. When we start talking about adding an officer or adding staff, I mean, we usually do a full analysis when we're adding staff, but the national average for local government is 23.2 employees per 1,000. Tequesta is at 16.7. So we're under the national average by quite a bit, actually. For national average for police officers, 3.5 per 1,000. We're at, even with the increase for the new officer, we're going to be at 20.5 or 3.35 per 1,000. And then just the fun tidbit is we're at 8-man shifts for fire. We're assuming a 7-man shifts. We're at 1.14, which is right along with the national averages. This slide just represents the same graphic. While our population has increased, our staffing has increased. We've always stayed under 17 per 1,000, and so we've always kept a pretty good number of staff for the level of service that we provide to the village. Next slide, and you guys have seen these slides, but it's just a pie chart of where our revenues come from. A majority of our revenues come from property taxes. This slide is a little different this year because we have that little green one, and that's the reserves that we plan on using to fund Remembrance Park Phase 2 and to improve Old Dixie. The proposed expenditures, you'll see 62% of our expenditures go towards salary or employee benefits, and then debt service and some operating expenses. This slide kind of shows the trajectory for our personnel services and our capital outlay and our operating expenditures. So seeing why we typically stay pretty flat, or at least from last year to this year, pretty flat with operating expenditures. Our personnel costs have went up. Something we'll continue to look at that as we move forward. This slide was a slide that I've added since I don't know if most of you guys have seen this slide. I know we went over this presentation, but this is a change in taxable value. So you can see over the years, we've had that taxable value, kind of fluctuate. In 2004, 5 started going up. 2009, 10, most people are aware of that big dip. We're seeing that. We're seeing in 2023, 24, we had big spikes. Now we're coming back down to where our millage rate's only 7.91%. We are estimated pretty flat in the future. As we look at this next slide, we have 5 years. Our 5-year projections were pretty flat. We're at 3.5–4% increase. Where in the last couple of years we've been seeing double digits, or even this year with 7.91%. We are not projecting that in the future. We do not see that coming. As you'll see, as we get into like 28, 29, we start to see a little negative, still manageable. The reason why we're not projecting is what we've seen is, over the past couple of years, we've seen some big projects come through that's really helped keep our millage rate high. Obviously, everybody knows the sales market with homes, but as we look at 26 and 27, that very bottom line, we're not seeing any projects. We don't have any major projects coming online. Where in the past we always had, sea glass or some of these other projects. We don't have those coming in the next couple of years. So we got to be mindful of the staff, the salary increases, but also a flat millage rate. This next slide kind of shows what our salaries have done over the last several years, and so you see that trend climbing up, where our trend for our millage rate is going to be very flat. So when we talk about taking $1.4 million out of reserves, you'll see in gray you have our 3-month operating target is $4.7 million. On top of the 4.75 and 25 we're projecting. On top of that, we have an additional $1.9 million. So we're going to be taking 1.4, or we're proposing to take 1.4 to pay for Remembrance Park. typically this is how projects get funded. You build up your unassigned fund balance. You either bond it, which we're not going to do, or you get grants, which we don't have. So the third option to pay for these things is typically through your unassigned fund balance. As we kind of close out the general fund, we start into the building fund. And the highlight of this really is probably the next slide, is that even through 2026, we still have a positive balance, still showing positive. Depending on, our projects that are coming through the building department, we may have to, make some adjustments on our building permit fees. But as we promised 4 or 5 years ago when we first adjusted those down, we will look at these every year and determine what we need to do for building permits. Some of our enterprise funds, refuse and recycling, just as an explanation for those that haven't followed, we're one of the only municipalities that have refuse and recycling as part of our tax bill. So if your refuse and recycling bill, and I'm just throwing out a number, I don't know what it really is, but $250, if you pay that early, you pay your tax bill early, that's 5% discount that you get. So every year we're losing on average about 3% of our revenue for refuse and recycling. So we still have to pay waste management, but then we lose 3% of our revenue. So we are proposing a 3.5% administrative cost on top of the user fees for waste management. Works out to about $11 for the year. And so that'll be coming to you guys when we do our non-ad valorem fees. With that increase of the additional 3.5%, you will see that our balance is estimated at the end of 26 to be 16,000, which is about where the sweet spot is. We don't need to have any more than $1 in this account. However, we just need to make sure it stays positive so our general fund doesn't have to support this fund. Utilities, as we switch gears to water, we have a list of, and I've cut this list down by about 5 slides that Marjorie gave me, but we have a highlight of some of the things that we're doing. I think the big takeaway for water is we're really switching from planning to really doing some projects, and I think some big projects coming online. I'll highlight those, but these are just some of the highlights that Marjorie and her team have completed this year. So I think we're really trying to move the needle. Obviously, she's going to be reporting these as we go through. Some of just our net, our unrestricted net position at the end of the year, at the end of 26, we're very healthy. We are expecting, and I think it's highlighting this next year, over $10 million in the SRF funds. We're gonna have about $12 million in capital funds that we have. So we're gonna do some pay as you go, and then some of the SRF funding. This is a breakdown of just our revenue. You see the $845,000, that's that $10 capital charge. That does help fund our capital projects, so it is helping move the needle. And then this is the breakdown per section. We have our water department is broken down to administration, production, distribution, customer service. So just shows the cost breakdown for those, and obviously the capital improvement, renewal, and replacement. And then this breaks it down by personnel and operating costs, obviously some debt funding, and then the principal and interest, that we've broken that down. These are estimates at this point. As we lock those rates in, get their SRF funding, we will have more of a complete number, but we feel like they're good placeholders. Water main, these are just the highlights of what the projects that are really coming online, and you guys know some of these. I think you guys have had some decision points already for these. Tequesta Drive, that project the bid is underway. Water main, Beach Road Phase 2, that agreement is underway. Estimated $5.9 million. Some of that was offset by a developer agreement, and then the other parts can be SRF funding. And then RO membrane replacement, bid is underway for that. And then water treatment plant filter media replacement. Something we've been talking about for maybe 4, maybe even 5 years is the water treatment plant improvements, and we're finally getting there. The loan agreement is underway, and be getting that SRF funding. And I know just my conversations from a high level, you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, especially like the SCADA needs to be improved. And so I think this will be a great investment for the water utility department. And the last fund to go through is the stormwater fund. As you guys know, this has been a fund that's we've been challenged with several of the rains and storms going back to like 2021. We've had to make a lot of significant emergency repairs, which has depleted this fund. This year that we're currently in, we're really trying to hold the line. I think we had some light maintenance money that we allocate in this fund. Obviously, some of the Dover Ditch project that we're looking forward to, we have money set aside for that, and that's currently out to bid. Hopefully, be getting that award out soon. And then, so this year we're transferring $135,000 from that water utility tax over here. So hopefully, by the end of 26, we'll have that fund. It'll be start to see a little bit of health, a little bit of life. And hopefully we don't have to supplement any major expenditures to this fund. Next slides, and you guys can go through, it's in your backup, but just some of the 5-year capital improvement plans, some of the requests that we have that we're funding in this budget. And I have probably some more detail in the next couple slides. And then obviously we can always come back to if you have any questions about any of these projects. This is the vehicle replacement fund. These are proposed purchase that we're doing. So you'll see, you know, probably the highlight one, because it costs the most money, is the rescue vehicle for fire. It's a 15-year-old vehicle. We are making that commitment this year. We've talked about it for the last, I think, year or two. And then the continued replacement of our police patrol vehicles. We've done a really good job of trying to keep them up to speed. I think we've really switched more to a purchase instead of a lease, which I think we'll see some additional revenue come back to us when we sell those vehicles. So just the last couple slides, you know, every year we do our strategic plan. I like to show these next couple slides is to show how we have tied our budget to these strategic priorities that council has lined out. Just the number one priority on the list was provide additional match funding for the state appropriation to Cuesta Park. As you guys know, we just approved that grant agreement, $340,000. We do have $250 set aside. We are bringing back to the July meeting a $14,000 amendment to get that done. Identify additional CIP funding. Part of what we've done with the water department is we've taken 21% of the revenues and set it aside for capital improvement funding. And so that kind of checks the box for this. We still need to do something for the general fund, and we'll continue to look for grants and other funding mechanisms for that. But I think this is a big step to try to help, you know, cover some of the capital. That 21% works out to about $2 million. And that'll hopefully help with some pay-go and not rely on borrowing money. And then number 3, I still have in yellow because I think we're still, you know, teetering on trying to get that stood up. But we did check a box with putting 50% of the water utility tax, $135,000 towards stormwater maintenance. So I think that one I think we need to keep an eye on. Employee retention and recruitment. You guys know some of the numbers that we're looking at for that. It's on the slide. I think we're doing a good job of trying to maintain and recruit good employees. Consider Remembrance Park Phase 2. This is priority number 5. We have put some money, taken money out of the reserves to fund that as a one-time expenditures. Typically with those reserves, you don't want to take them out to cover recurring costs, and so this one's I think a good use of the one-time expenditures. Develop future master plan, $30,000 in utilities, and this is to fund a facility analysis, a space plan. Long-term goal is to move our water distribution team out to the water treatment plant with a facility. This will help us to determine the space needed and if it'll fit out there. We are estimating $250,000 in our CIP, and then the building and PD will help improve Station 11. 15-year road and sidewalks. Doug's did a great job of maintaining and keeping that going. We are number 8, expanding improved critical land areas to serve and maintain the village. Distinctive features through land acquisition and park improvements. We do have some money in the budget for improved park maintenance, Constitution Park of 25,000, and then Tequesta Park of 22,000. We are gonna look to improve Linear Trail, which is a beautification that we've talked about with Old Dixie. I think there'll be some beautification along Old Dixie, plus some gateway kind of improvements on Tequesta Drive, and as people come into the village, hopefully really notice those differences. Continued education toward policy on golf carts and e-bikes. Have a list of some of the stuff we've done. You guys know I sent an email recently that the state did pass a bill, and I don't even know how it got through, but it got tagged on to a transportation bill, and so we're going to be looking at that bill once the governor signs to see if there's something that the village wants to add as far as e-bike safety. Expand tree planting efforts. We've talked about this at the last workshop. We do have in the budget $10,000, which is a $2,500 increase from last year's budget for help improvement beautification. We hope this will kind of move the needle with and give some incentive for residents to put in trees. And then 11 and 14 are kind of tied together, just like 12 and 13 are tied together. 11 and 14, this is the mobility plan, and then the high-level transportation plan and mobility. We'll have a better idea of what that looks like in July and August when council ultimately approves that. So we don't have any budget items tied to those, but we would come back either next year or at some point, depending on council's temperature for a budget, any kind of budget items for those two items. And then 12 and 13, same $100,000, but it's really to improve the gateways and beautification of Old Dixie. That's a project that we will be pulling out of reserves as one-time expenditures. Last, just the other priorities. These were not top priorities for council, but we left them in because they were still something that we were working on. Consider the policy of cross-connection control compliance. We have budgeted $60,000 in utilities to help us find those areas where we don't have compliance, and then also this consultant will help us educate the public and help us come in line with where we want to be. We do have $850,000 in CIP for necessary bridge maintenance. That's well overdue. I don't think we've done much bridge maintenance to that thing since it was since we built it back 2009-ish, whenever it was built. So I think this $850,000 was the infrastructure surtax. This pretty much exhausts that. We talked about it sunsetting in December. This $850,000 is coming out of that. Establish safe and quiet railroad crossing. We do have a reimbursable grant of $200,000 set aside. Once we make the safety improvements to the railroad, they will reimburse us the $200,000. So it should be a net zero. And then the utility project timeless reporting, Marjorie's already started that, and hopefully you'll see the fruits of the labor with projects actually hitting the ground this year. Moving forward. And then improve communication with development community. We've done a few things already with a workshop for County Line, and I know our building department's really trying to reach out with Appreciation Day. If there is a big project that comes down, we'll have additional conversations about a charrette or a more meaningful, some of the direction that council gave in the strategic plan. But at this point, I don't know that there's a lot of action for that one, but I think it's in the future we could have some additional discussion for that. Just the next steps, talked about July 1st, the taxable values will come in. We'll reevaluate the budget at that point, and then I think we just set a date for July 22nd for the next budget workshop. And then we'll need to set our stormwater and solid waste rates at the July meeting, and then maximum tax rate will be set in July, and we can always go down, we can't go up. Just a few other considerations, I believe is my last slide, but you guys heard a presentation from Public Safety Pension. We are going to have a negative impact on the budget moving forward. Mortality rates is probably going to require us to contribute more, and also the lower expected rate of return that the board is setting will have an impact on our budget moving forward. We will have to contribute more into that pension plan to make sure it stays healthy and funded. Just most of the other ones I think you guys know about, the economy, making sure that we stay on top of that, health insurance, job markets. Hopefully we'll see a flattening of that a little bit, and not see the big jumps in salaries. Obviously, whatever the state is doing at the state level, hopefully, keep an eye on, make sure it doesn't have a huge impact on the village, and try to continue to be advocates for home rule. And then capital needs, we still have a lot of them. And, with us sunsetting that money in the capital fund, just something to keep an eye on as we go forward. With that, I'm going to need a drink of water. So any questions, thoughts? And Jeff's here, and we can answer any questions you have on the budget.
Thank you, Jeremy. All right, council, I'll open it up for questions and discussion.
Feel free to start.
Do we, is any part of this is fair game? Do we have any? Okay. Let's start with Jeff on unreserved funds balance, 7.2 million. I'm calculating that as 8 months of reserves. I'm guessing the goal is 3 months, but what is the target for that fund as far as months, the amount? And I say that because I don't want residents to think we have too much in cash reserves, and then what are we doing with that? Is it capital? Is
3
it
months
offset?
of expenditures is our target for reserves. And that this year will be 4.7 million and some change. And we're going to have, we're estimating at this point in time, we're going to have 5.4 or $700,000 over our amount. But we are excited about the park and the beautification projects.
Thank you for that straightforward answer.
I have a quick, and this kind of open discussion, brainstorming, so I'm going to chime in if someone brings up an item I had a question on, so we're not moving on and going back to the same thing. So on the 3 months target, I know that's a great target, and from speaking to cities that have had been impact on the West Coast from the hurricanes, they blew through that 3 months in a hot minute, right? And so it is really important to have that, and I think even more of a cushion. I agree with you. There's a fine line with having too much reserves, you're not being, you're hoarding taxpayer dollars. But I do agree with the manager too. You look at other cities, that is how they've been able to pay all cash with huge capital projects. So I do want to keep that in mind. 3 months is good, but I think a larger cushion is better, especially considering what we know some of our cities have gone through with the hurricanes.
That kind of, if I may, it's kind of best practices is 3 months. Part of that will allow FEMA to get in if we get hit really hard. We'll have cash to be able to continue to operate and do the things we need to, and then they'll start pitching in. So that's the 3 months is kind of that cushion before FEMA shows up. So I don't agree. I agree 100% that more money is better, but that's just because I'm very conservative.
Yeah, and there's uncertainty with FEMA right now, and what their response is going to be too, which is being heavily discussed at the local, regional, state levels too. So I think that's in the back of my mind. We have potential changes there. That's why I just want to throw that out there, just for thought.
Yeah, my thoughts on the reserves. I was here when we didn't have any reserves. I first came on council, we didn't really have any. And I wasn't even raised to live like that, my own personal budget. So I like to hold on to that warm and fuzzy, and I try not to really touch it unless we absolutely need to, but also watching what other municipalities go through. But I understand that balance of what's too much. But just so my fellow council members know, I definitely support that we have, a very smart amount so that we have, everything we need covered just in case, because that is what the residents expect us to do. And I would never put my family in that predicament either, so cheers. I think we even talked about even a 4 month at one point, but the 3 month became the target. But I very much enjoy those 3 month reserves.
I can continue on the questioning. I don't know if anyone has any additional. We talked about Remembrance Park Phase 2 for our capital budget and reserve funds. Is there any way to bring that into the mobility plan if the timing is right? Because it does connect Riverside and Seabrook. And if there's grants or other county funding that we can link that up to and maybe save some dollars on that project. And if this is the first time it's said, then you might not have an answer, but if we could look into that in the future to save a few bucks on the Remembrance Park Phase 2 budget.
So just, I think it's a good suggestion. We haven't looked too much outside of like TPA for that mobility grant. I mean, that was gonna be the big thing, but they really like, complete street projects. Those are the things that they're trying to fund. So we'll have to look different avenues that we haven't necessarily looked, but the funding that we were targeting with that particular mobility stuff was gonna be some TPA funding. So
Okay, understood.
We'll look at some others.
Just as we were talking, I was like, wait a second, these are connecting streets. We have connection problems.
Yeah.
That makes sense, okay. Do we have a comparison on what other cities are charging on water? I didn't see that in there.
We can get you that. We have provided that in the past when we did a rate structure, but we can freshen that up, I'm sure, and get you that.
Thank you. And while we're on water, when I look at the comparison of the study that's done between other municipalities that have their own fire, police, and water, I don't think that's the best study, because a lot of those municipalities, they don't actually have their own water. They have a utility team, but they don't necessarily create their own water in the water plant. And then they also have fire assessment fees, which we do not have. So I get the millage rate and I get the study, but I don't think it tells the whole story. And I'm only giving kudos to the village staff and the water department, and that I think we're ranked a lot better on that study than it shows.
Which study?
So when
Is
you
it-
go back to the millage rates, and the village manager highlighted
It was blues.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're yellow in the blues.
Chart, like
Yeah.
where we're ranked,
It says the millage rate,
right?
but there's a lot more to that story. Because those other municipalities have a fire assessment fee. Town of Palm Beach doesn't have their own water. They have their own team, but they don't have their own water. And there's a few other misnomers in there.
But our water is not in our millage rate, or the enterprise fund. So yeah, that's not, the water's not even wrapped up in that.
Right.
So,
So those are the total millage. I 100% agree. It doesn't tell the story of what our staff do every day. I think it's a great point. I had one slide to represent this, but I think, the ones in blue, those are just ones that have their own police and fire. I didn't highlight the 7 that have their own police, fire, and water. I just said it. So, and I think whatever total millage rate in there is the fire service as well. So it's
Okay.
it's everything. It's their total millage rate that we pulled right off the appraisal district site. So, that should be a complete picture as far as the millage rate, but not the services that, the amount that we do with the limited staff that we have, so.
All right, thank you. Jeff, we talked about mortality rates coming up, and that's an unknown number. The whole state will be affected by it. Something I've seen in the past is that fire and police have a high divorce rate before retirement. And I know it's a sad thing, but when it comes to pension and actuary tables, it usually is a benefit to the village. And I would assume that the actuary and whoever's dealing with that puts that into play, but maybe just in the back of your mind, keep that on there, that they've gone back and redone the study of how many people retired, divorced, or married. And it makes a difference in the positive manner, usually. I know it's a negative thing to bring, but it helps during budget talks. Bear with me as I go through my notes. Millage rate. Are we on to talk about tax rate, millage rate? Is that open and fair game?
Yeah, anything's fair game.
So we have a great millage rate, and I would support reducing the millage rate if we had a long-term plan on what that looks like, not just to reduce it for a year and then decide next year what that would be. I think if we did reduce it for a year, that we wouldn't be necessarily doing the residents or village staff and resources. We wouldn't be making a positive decision for that year. So for a 1-year change, I would not support reducing the millage rate. But if we were to have a better plan for a 10-year, I'd be willing to listen to that. I do think that being that we do not have new development and high rises, we do not have the cash reserves that some of these other municipalities around here have. And although we're not in competition with these municipalities, we are indirectly with sometimes residents, but also employees. So as you saw in the millage rates, some of these millage rates are much higher than ours. And if you look at their water rates, I think their water rates are going to be much higher also. So our ability to recruit employees and pay the bills without new development and high rises, I think creates a tough environment for Tequesta. And I think, well, I'm not gonna say it for everybody, I support keeping in the way we've been developing responsibly in Tequesta. So for a 1-year change, I do not support reducing the millage rate. That's all my notes. Thank you.
On that topic, real quick, the slide, I'm trying to find it quickly. I just found it. Hold on. What's the label? The general fund 5-year financial forecast. I mean, could you update that? Like, say we lower the millage rate. Could you update that showing a lower millage rate? And that would be a really good picture of like what the impact would be for the next 5 years. Is that an easy task?
It would be if we have an idea of what we want to lower it, where we go, or I can just do pieces,
And maybe just for all intents and purposes, do the rollback rate,
do the rollback rate.
which would be the most, right? Because I know last time we lowered it, it was not the rollback rate. It was like, well, then we can, I mean, I guess, do whatever you think's appropriate.
Okay.
That's an easy number, and that would be
I'll give you some numbers.
the most that would be done. We did not go back to the rollback rate the last time we lowered the millage. But I'm just saying some kind of, or if you guys want to do like 2 mills, like what do you think would be appropriate?
And maybe even what's the number, if we can get to it, it's an actual reduction in taxes, right? Because we can roll back the mills, say we reduce taxes, but my tax bill still increases, right? So that average citizen goes, wait a second, they said they reduced my taxes, but my taxes went up. So I kind of struggle with that short-term benefit, or if it's a $50 benefit for the individual, what kind of reaction does that have to village services? And I think that anywhere from water to the concert series, we really appreciate these village services.
Just
I
as
can
a,
do
and I
the-
think I shared this, just as a, I guess, we'll say a high level, ugly look at something. If you were to take $118,000 on a $700,000 home, the average home payer would save $41. But you look at that homestead exemption, like to your point, you're going to see a $109 increase. So there's still going to be, you're still going to see an increase even with that. So, but we can play with a number like that, tie it into this. I think these are best guesses. Like I said, with this slide, and I don't know how much I elaborated when I was talking. It was kind of a blur. I was losing consciousness. I was talking so much, but we kept the property taxes, moving forward. I think 3.5–4%, because we're not going to see huge jumps that we've had in the past. And then we've also kept personnel costs pretty flat, which is probably a little. We probably should have went a little more aggressive with personnel costs with what we've seen, but I think both of those could probably be adjusted. But you're only looking at 4% property tax increase for revenue, or 3.5%. So it doesn't really have a lot to play with when you talk about we're already in the negative for our 5-year projection. So if we were to turn our millage rate on 2026 and turn it down to this number, the 6.4. You're going to see just more negative numbers as we move forward in the future.
Where did the 3.5–4%? Where did that assumption come from? Is it like economic forecasting that you guys researched, or like where did you come up with a 3.5–4%?
Generally, it's been running along that lines. I mean, 3% to 3.5% seems to be CPI over time, over a long period of time. We gave it a little extra because a lot of houses have been turning over, and then that helps us because it resets the taxable value.
So if you see like the increase 2.9% is capped, and a majority or a big part of what our revenue has been commercial or redevelopment, we're not seeing that. So take the 2.9, go up a rate. I mean, you're looking at 3.5–4% without new construction. I mean, that's pretty conservative. I mean, we can be a lot. I mean, we can be a lot more aggressive and go 5 or 6%, but then just to make our numbers look good. But we've over the period of time that I've been here, we've always been conservative and we try to beat those numbers and we've been successful. If we start getting too aggressive and looking at 5 or 6%, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Agree, yes, we don't want to make the numbers look good. That is not good practice
Yeah.
for what we're doing. And then just to comment on what you said, Councilmember French, is, you know, I, and Councilmember Brandon knows, I've been beating this drum since I've been on council. Like, to me, any reduction is helpful. You know, that offsets the $11 a month extra charge they're gonna have on refuse and recycling. You know, we had concerned residents in here last year that were really concerned about the raises with the WM contract and our stormwater. So to me, I do feel like anything you can help, you know, it can offset other costs, because our utility bills are going up, not the water, but, you know, like electricity, right? Everything's going up. So if we can provide any relief, I think in general it's gonna help. That's kind of how I've always operated. Anyone else?
On the millage rate?
Anything?
Yeah.
No, like this is like kind of a
Yeah.
brainstorming. I mean, it's like, yeah, just throw anything out there that you want to talk about.
On the millage rate, since we're talking about it, no, I definitely agree that we should keep the millage rate flat where it's at. I think, I don't think the reduction, if any, is worth it. To all of your points, I'm not gonna restate it all, but I'm definitely there. Generally, as always, I feel like I say this every time, but I think you guys did an awesome job, not only on the budget, but putting this all together to make it digestible. I'll be the first to admit, numbers are not my strong suit, and I was able to understand it after probably 4 reviews, so that's not too bad. And really hats off to staff for that, and you, of course, Jeremy, you do a great job at it. Very clear. I appreciate the conservative approach. I think that is the right approach. There's always, you know, you never know what's around the corner. Listening to the mayor of Sanibel was just like, I mean, at the League of Cities lunch, it was just, I mean, it could be us so easily, you know, and I think we just always have to be thinking, you know, not worst case scenario, but plan for the worst, I guess is the best way to put it. So I appreciate that. I also think you guys did an awesome job, as always, aligning the overall budget with our annual strategic plan goals. You know, you hit a lot of those, and to see Remembrance Park Phase 2 and the Old Dixie beautification, I agree, that's awesome to see. Those are gonna be 2 very just like impactful projects for our village. From someone who lives here every day and someone who's never been here, it's gonna make a difference, and I think that's great. So, and all of this while maintaining, if not improving, you know, the current high level of service that we always provide. So, I don't have any specific questions, but those are my notes.
So to piggyback on that, I agree. This has probably been, out of all my years of budget season, this has probably been the best presentation and slides put together to understand where we're at and where we've been. Since we're on this slide in particular, so this, just to clarify, this is what you guys are roughly predicting for the next few years for the property taxes, correct? And the fact that it's kind of staying the same makes me nervous.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, if we flip back to that slide that you so generously gave us about like the big projects that used to be coming on, but there's some hiccups. So we were expecting some of the other buildings that we did vote on the past like 2.5 years, and some of those buildings aren't even, one of them I think even sold again. So that's why I get very concerned when I hear any elected officials start planning using money that isn't even there yet. So I'm glad we didn't do that. But thank you for providing this, because this, I think, is gonna be very transparent on, we don't have what we thought we had coming from this kind of stuff. So again, I go back to like with my own family, what can we do to enhance things that we can try and get money from? I don't wanna increase the market on the housing. However, if we keep the town infrastructure safe, clean, nice, we keep our water plant up, we're building a park. I mean, I'm kind of torn on some degrees on that Remembrance Park Phase 2. However, parks increase home values. And a lot of the homes right in that area, they don't have water access. They don't have a community dock or a boat ramp. They don't, not necessarily walkable to the beach. So what can we do to help enhance those homes inside the village? And then that helps us not have to raise taxes if we're kind of balancing everything out. So I'm kind of all over the place. Because this frightens me that we don't have some of those buildings. Like 3 years ago, we thought they were coming and now they're not. So I'm glad we didn't use those funds that didn't exist yet. But also watching the market, inflation still, everything else in the higher government. I'm going to be very conservative and very cautious about doing anything with our millage rate as of right now, especially since we don't have a lot of solidified numbers till July, even like healthcare numbers and stuff. I'm going to sit still for now until I have better data and information, and then I can make a better decision and kind of give you guys a better temperature of where I'm going with our millage rate. But again, I don't think we're fully there yet. We are still rebuilding a lot of the water mains, and that, again, that's infrastructure. And for me, that increases property values and what people are willing to pay to be here. You know, when I visit other municipalities, I'm always reminded, oh, that's what I pay for. Got it. And, you know, my husband's one of the biggest sticklers. Like, I pay so much in taxes. But then we go other places and we're reminded by the good schools, the safe communities, the infrastructure, the town looks pretty, we have events. I mean, it's everything wrapped into one. So it's kind of going back to you get what you pay for. So that's where I am right now. No specific questions, because again, you did a great job making this very understandable, and I appreciate that. Because I know you're kind of a numbers guy, you could have probably gone really crazy with it, but I appreciate that.
He always reins me in.
I thank him for that, because you're probably like, oh, that's a little bit too much. So thank you, Jeremy.
I'll echo the same comments as my colleagues. Just great job by staff and everyone. And I know that you're already working on next year's budget and last year's budget and doing all that. So thank you. Just a random question for you. The note on the rec center, that's fixed rate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I thought so. 'Cause we saw the interest going down and then just minimal increase in the principal we expect. And that's just a timing thing, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Our principal doesn't go up. The payments wouldn't go up typically.
It fluctuates a little bit, but not much.
Depends on the calendar.
Yeah.
Our health insurance, we're holding a 12% placeholder. Do we pay 100% of our employees?
We pay 100% of our employees.
Employees, but employee plus family, they,
I think it's 25%.
Contribute that,
We true 25% to the family.
and really the only other comment I have is that anything we could ever do to continue the great work that we're seeing this year on the stormwater and the water to get rid of that capital improvement charge of $10. Person would be, we try to find creative ways to get rid of it last year and the year prior when we first put it in there. So that would be the one thing I think that would be noticeable to our residents. Just to chime in on the ad valorem, not enough information like Lori mentioned yet. But also I think to cut it, what I think would be the minimal amount that we can with everybody's insurance going up and property value go up, they won't see it. If it goes down $5 a month or $10 a month, whatever go down. So I'm not saying that's not important because it is critical. But if you look 2 years out and we think some of the changes that are coming with some of our staffing models for some of our public safety and things like that, they're going to feel, because then we take away $6 or $7 a month. We got to add it back and then add another 12 to that. So then you're looking at a $20 a month increase, and that really is going to sting. So I'd rather just see us maintain based on the information that we know right now. It's a 6.4595 is where I'm at with that. So, but again, to the entire team, great job as always. Thank you.
If I can just add one point to it. So with that, when you talked about the water and trying to get rid of that, I mean, this is the first step of trying to reduce that $10 capital charge. We're nowhere near there yet, but the first step is really trying to set aside money so we can do pay-go projects, really can get some of that built up. So this is the first step, and we're still some time off, so I'm not making promises, but that's the intent of what we're doing.
Yeah, I recognize that, and the steps that we are taking and continue to take on the vehicle replacement fund, I think is one of the best decisions that staff has made. So congratulations to everybody that's a lot smarter than me in the room to do that. So
On the water utility and the recovery charge that Vice Mayor brought up, do we have, well, first of all, that study that Raffatilis, I can never remember their name.
Raftels.
Raffatilis, that was close. That was like a 20-year plan or something, wasn't it? A 20-year projection? I haven't looked at that for a while. Do we have like a 5-year projection though on like where we're at now, what that recovery charge will bring in capital projects? I don't know that there was a 5-year projection here.
We know it's bringing in $845,000 a year is what that's bringing in, and it's pretty flat because it's $10 per resident per month. So
Plus the fee increase, because then we do like 8% something.
yeah, but that $10 capital charge won't be the fee increase. But yes, there is a fee increase that we have 5-year. So we have that we already have approved. I think we're in year 3 of that 5-year rate. So in I guess I would say in 2 years we'd be looking at that again.
Okay.
Unless there's
I don't know if you have it, it's not too difficult. Maybe a 5-year projection would be helpful on that, kind of to see like where we've landed since we've done that. That would be some good data to look at. And then on using the reserves for Phase 2 of Remembrance Park this year, I fully support Phase 2 of Remembrance Park. I want to see it happen. I know I've said this up here multiple times, I think. I don't know that I'm in favor earmarking that money from reserves for this next year. I would really like to see how Phase 1 is utilized and also understand what those maintenance costs are going to be so we can maybe better plan a little bit. So I would like to take the pause on that, especially as $1.3 million is a good chunk of change. We do have the uncertain economy, the slowdown in development that we've seen, the potential property tax reform, and these kind of atypical, salary wage trends that we've been seeing. I'm a little hesitant to commit to that 1.3 this year. Next year, I probably would feel a little more comfortable, especially knowing how Phase 1 turned out and what those maintenance costs are. On the $100K for Old Dixie, that's just for linear trail.
Yeah, it's linear trail, and then like the gateways maybe on the south side, like the entrance coming into Tequesta. So all on Old Dixie.
Okay, and is that 100,000 something? Is that kind of like throwing paint at a wall, or do we have kind of a plan on what that 100,000 would include or entail?
Right now, we could probably spend $500,000 out there. We just threw out $100,000. We can do a lot with $100,000, but I don't think it'll be the full paint picture. I think there's a lot more to do out there, but I think it's a good start and be a good representation of what we want to do. A lot of it, you look at, if I go back to like the Treasure Coast plan, they lined out some of that. We had the streetscaping that EAC did. So, there's already good foundation for what that's going to look like. If you just look across the street on some of those bare spots on the east side, you have a pretty good collection of those trees and those plants that you want. So we feel like that was a good number when we first put it together.
Okay, but considering potentially we could spend more than 100,000 on Old Dixie this next year, depending on what we want to do, maybe another reason to maybe take a pause on the Phase 2 for Remembrance Park and push it a year. On the refuse and recycling, I know. So you said it's going to be $11 additional a month. We had that 25 cents a month recovery charge this past year, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I know at our last November workshop, you guys had, I think, like 3 good options of like phasing in a recovery charge, a higher recovery charge. Can we see that again in the July workshop and maybe update it?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, but we can figure out what it was and we can bring it back.
Yeah, it was from the November workshop. It had different like percentages in different years and kind of outlaid what that cash flow would look like. I think for me personally, it would help me kind of revisiting those options to make sure we're making the best choice for the residents on that one. We
went back to the drawing board and we found that we are losing roughly 3% of revenue. So that's how we came up with a 3.5%.
And you stated that at the November workshop too. So that, like I said, it was at 3%. You had like, we do 2% this year, 1%. It was just several options that were kind of mapped out. I personally think it would be helpful for us to have.
Excuse me, Mayor, is that the dollar amount you said is $11? Is that a month or a year per household?
A year.
A year.
Per year.
Oh, it's a year. Okay, an extra $11 a year. Let me. Okay. All right.
So I think, you know, and we can bring that back. I don't really recall the options, but we can definitely bring that back. I think, you know, 3.5%, you see that we're roughly 16,000. I mean, so we'll look at what our options were that we brought you guys.
Thank you. On the vulnerability assessment, what are, I know we've talked about this, I'm maybe not recalling, what were the next steps on that? Are we starting to plan for any of the proposed improvements on that? I do believe we've talked about looking for grants for some of that stuff, but is anything from there part of this budget?
Marjorie, do you want to take a shot at that?
Marjorie Craig, Utilities Director. The results of the vulnerability assessment, the primary recommendations that they made were to raise the generators at the at Village Hall and also at Public Services Building, and also to harden things at the water treatment plant, like some of the generators, which we have portable generators. Also, we put in there the swale reclamation. And so far, we have not been able to find a grant where we meet that criteria for the swale restoration, for the stormwater specific items. The other priority they had was to monitor, support what Loxahatchee River District does as far as potential sanitary sewer overflows due to elevated water in the wastewater system. Those were really I can go back and look at the list again, but those were the priority projects for the vulnerability assessment. Do you recall if I missed anything there? Oh, and Dover Ditch as well. So Dover Ditch, definitely it's going to start this year, may extend into next year. And then we'll be looking to try to get a grant for Dover Ditch Phase 2.
Okay. I do think when we were doing our strategic planning, we did talk about the VA when we were discussing the stormwater item. But yeah, does council feel like we should start kind of mapping out some of those requested improvements and potentially budgeting for them in the future? Maybe not this year, but
I think it'd be great to have a plan if we can lay them all out, the cost of each one and the priority, or what village staff believes the priority are. Give us the cost and see how we can maneuver those.
If I may. So the vulnerability assessment is just one tool, right? So as you may recall, it's an extremely prescriptive method of analyzing the inundation and all the modeling that shows the high, 100-year, bazillion-year high, and how it's going to impact the village. The village is very, very flat. So that's just like one tool, but we also have in the stormwater utility system a master plan with a prioritized list of pipelining projects. And right now, as I continue to stand before you, annually, the pipelining is the biggest bang for the buck right now. It extends that stormwater pipe that may be failing or near its lifespan for another 20 to 30 years beyond. But we also have stormwater swale reclamation projects that we have like for the next year or two, and then we're developing a prioritized list for into the future, and then also small projects. So it's kind of that part's separate, but the grants so far that we found will not fund anything that is should have been like a maintenance project. But like with Dover Ditch, we were able to get a legislative appropriation through the Loxahatchee River Preservation Initiative, and I see doing that again, pursuing that again. And any other project that we think would help improve the Loxahatchee River water quality. And I'll further investigate if we can do that with the swale reclamation as well. We might be able to.
Okay, so yeah, again, not for this year, but, and we can maybe bring it up again when we do our strategic planning next March, but it might help to kind of have it on paper.
Have that plan
Yeah.
together.
Like I said, maybe we decide for a couple more years to keep going for grants, and then if we continue to not be successful, like really start budgeting for some of them.
Totally agree. Appreciate the support. The manager has also been working with us to come up with some maps to be able to show you kind of what we've done in the past, what we have planned for the coming year, and what we have planned for the future.
Okay. And don't you go away, because my next two questions are utility related. The 100,000 for swales, what swales are we reclaiming?
So that would pay for 3 swales, and I think it's North Dover Road. Oh gosh, I should have looked at these before I came. Oh, she's out. I'll have to come back to you with the 3 projects, but we've got them, unless the manager sees them.
I was trying to pull it up.
Yeah,
If you
I
have
put 'em
other
in the
question,
CIP.
and jump it back. Let me see if I can find it.
Well,
real
no,
quick.
are these, well, it's all in our right of way, but are these like in front of people's houses, or is it more?
Some of them are. It's just where we've found some ponding, localized ponding, and we want to improve that. And I know one of them is on North Dover Road, and we put the 3, they're like little maps and everything for the 3 projects in our capital project budget list.
Okay, because I've had concerned citizens reach out about the village reclaiming the swales. And I was told at the time that we weren't gonna be just going in and redoing swales in front of people's homes. Technically, it's the homeowner's responsibility to maintain that swale, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So I think it's extremely important to get the flooding off the road, especially if it's a problem area. But, I mean, is that typical practice to use taxpayer dollars to pay for someone's swale that should be maintaining it on their own? Or this isn't taxpayer dollars, this would be user fees from the storm
For the stormwater
or
utility.
the water tax utility, wherever this one's technically coming from. But still, it's other people's, collective village money, and we're paying for specific properties, swale improvement, when they should be maintaining it themselves. I don't know. I'm kind of like going back and forth on that one, because it's really important to get the water off the roads.
Now, these swales though could affect the neighbors, so just like the water devices we spoke about, it's a public health safety, right? They're in charge of it, they should be maintaining it properly, but if they do not, it could flood the neighbor's house. And now, how do we deal with that as a village? We're trying to save those neighbors because that person's not taking care of them. So do you fine that person for their swale, or do you reclaim it? I don't know, but it sounds like the water device issue over again.
Let me just take a shot at these. These 3 that Marjorie and their team, and I've been on site with all 3 of them. These 3 are all pretty unique in that it's not just like one property. They didn't take care of it. One, which is over on Fairview, has been a problem since I've been here. We've had massive flooding over there, so you do start talking about health and safety. We're not talking about one property. We're talking about trying to grade multiple properties down there. So these 3 are all, I think, priorities that we've had issues with over time. And so while we'll work with property owners to try to, make sure it's maintained, I think over time it's been a collective either, permitting or letting people fill it in, but it's become a problem where we have health and safety issues.
Quick question on swales. Is it possible to give us an estimate of what it would cost a resident to redo their swale on their own? Maybe say every 20 feet or something, like give a range of it. And I'd just like to compare that cost, because I'm trying to figure out why it's gonna cost you guys $33,000 for each section. And maybe, without spending this money on it, for those, if it was cost affordable, maybe there are some that might be willing to do it on their own. I'm just curious what that number would be, so we can educate.
We can do that. I know that David got the estimates for the 3 projects. As the manager mentioned, it is more than just in front of one house. It's along,
Sure.
and the idea is to allow it to flow into our stormwater system. And the project number one's Garden Street. Number two is North Dover Road, and then project number three is Dover Circle.
Okay.
So, and it's more than just one house, but I can give you,
And I get that. I'm just actually just curious for our residents.
Yeah, I can
because
give you a
It's very
breakdown.
possible that even a couple of residents in a row, like let's say they get a lot of flooding and they say, we need to fix this. And if it comes out cost effective for them, they might be in a position to do it themselves.
I appreciate that.
And then water's off the road and we have a partnership with the residents.
I appreciate that opportunity.
I could be wrong. I don't know where on North Dover it is, and for total disclosure, I live on North Dover. But I also have the sewer, I have the manhole cover in my front yard, and whenever that was put in, years ago, I'm sure, you can see the cut that goes almost parallel to, North Dover from my house to about 6 or 7 more past Mayor Brennan's, there, you can see the cut in the road, and our yard was never, and I'm assuming that was Loxahatchee River or whoever put that in, I'm not quite sure, but mine is as flat as a street. Yeah, I just bought my house 3 years ago, so I had nothing to do with that, but I can see why that happened, and it does impact a lot. If you look at just the concrete cut that goes across to the manhole caddy corner about 3 houses down, that's just where the water.
Yeah, they're
the
terrible
water
with their
does sit.
manholes. And I have said on the record, like my house is one. I've been in that house for quite some time now. And even the owner before me, I mean, my swale has never been maintenanced necessarily. And I could see it most likely has filled in over the decades. So I get that. But again, there might be some other houses. And that's not anything that someone did wrong. Just, I didn't even know we were supposed to be making sure it's a certain depth and a certain width. And I just thought my Christmas lights just started to not be as, okay.
And is there, like, these 3 locations, is it like getting close to people's homes? Is it getting inside their homes? Is the water staying for days after like a rain event?
I've not seen anywhere where it's, of these locations where it's getting in someone's home, in those locations. It's not, and the manager may know more information over over the time, but I've been here almost 3 years, and it's not getting in their homes there. But it is ponding. Really, I haven't seen anywhere in the village that the ponding doesn't dissipate within the 48 hours, which is kind of a design criteria for water to go away within 48 hours. But still, if we have ponding, people have trouble driving through the areas. And so we want to make sure we can make it as smooth as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. Maybe for the next meeting, we can have a little more detail. Like,
Sure.
Are we ripping out shrubs and bushes, or are they all grass? You know, are there driveways in it? If the driveways don't have a swale, is that going to be less effective? And again, I think that's a slippery slope to start paying for these swales. And is like everyone going to expect us to redo their swales, or we're paying for all of them that need redone? I don't know. I feel like I just need a little more information on that, and maybe the long-term master plan, because I could see where some residents are like, well, the village paid to redo these swales, like, why aren't you redoing mine? I don't know. It's a slippery slope for me. So maybe
That's a
just
good
have
point.
some more information the next meeting.
Very good point.
I don't disagree that it's a problem that needs to be addressed throughout the village, right? So, and then on some of the utility projects, you can have this for next time too, or you can email me between the meetings. Some of the projects, we kind of talked about this last year with, making sure we're kind of cash flowing the capital projects the best we can. Some of them, like the relocate of the concentrate disposal, this is at the bridge, right? Mm-hmm. It's last year we had 1.3, and this year you're doing 660,000. Is some of this rollover, or it wasn't clear on this report if this is in addition to that 1.3 we planned last year, or if this is rollover? And same with like the beach road, I think we had 4.5 last year, and now we're at 4.7. I don't think that's an addition. I think that's rollover too. Can you maybe just kind of clear up and clarify what's rollover from this year and any estimate changes?
Mayor, that's a great question. We expect to complete the concentrate pipe, but just in case, because remember last year, DOT didn't allow us in, so we did rebudget it. It wasn't a rollover, it was like a rebudgeting. So we don't roll over unless we encumbered the money. So if we don't encumber the money, we have to rebudget it, or it won't be there in the budget. And if DOT doesn't allow us to get in there and do the project, then we don't want to be caught without money to make sure that project gets done. And it's the same with the other project that you mentioned, which is, I think, Beach Road maybe.
Do we think we're spending the 1.3 this year?
Yeah.
And this is an addition.
And we think it's less than that. We think it's gonna be less than that. So
Okay.
that's why the price went down, because that was an updated cost. For once, the price went down.
Okay.
Whereas
Yeah,
with-
maybe
for
just if between the meetings, just a better
Sure.
comparison on some of the bigger ticket from last year. Because like I said, some of those didn't have any money planned for this year, last year. So I just want to understand kind of where we're at.
No problem. And in the case of Beach Road, we thought we would be able to get funded and get the agreement through DEP, but as we've seen with the water treatment plant project, it took 6 months for DEP to send us back the agreement, and so we didn't want to be caught without money to get that project done. So we rebudgeted. It's not a rollover because we haven't encumbered any money, but we rebudgeted that project, and then the price that you're seeing, the cost you're seeing, is the latest estimate for that project. And in that case, that project kind of stayed the same, went up maybe a little bit.
100,000.
But that also means that we would not expend those dollars this fiscal year.
Right. Again, which kind of, it's like a moving target with kind of
Utilities
realizing that
is-
capital recovery charge, and that's a tricky one. Because I do understand the challenges you face, because a lot of times you're waiting on other jurisdictions or external parties. But yeah, it would help just at least for me to have a better understanding of last year versus this year.
Utilities is a marathon and not a sprint. And I would tell you that I love utilities because there's always it's just exciting, it's always something going
Always
on.
something going on. Always
It's
a
frustrating, it can be
challenge.
frustrating, but
Sure.
we love it. So, I love what I do.
Okay. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Marjorie.
Things the vehicle replacement spreadsheet. Those aren't all budgeted for this year, are they?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, all of these are okay. On the rescue vehicle, what's the lead time on that one?
Last time I saw was 18 to 24 months. When we get ready to, probably they'll start gearing up now and trying to, work with the company, get all the specs, and then we'll have a better idea of what it's going to cost. But and I think this is nationwide. This isn't just one company. This is everywhere. You're looking at 18 to 24 months to build a vehicle. Maybe more, maybe less, but we'll get you, as we start to turn the page on that, we'll get you a better estimate.
Okay. Then what are the current maintenance costs on that vehicle?
I'll have to get you that
Email
number.
it later. Okay. And then kind of my last comment, and just on the general fund, as I understand it, there will be more DOJ efforts continuing. And so as we look at our budget, this is more for staff, and I think I've said this every year, just be real nitpicky on some of the line items on the budget report. Like, in my opinion, say like the past 2 years, you haven't used more than 60% of that fund. Maybe you just reduce that line item, because everything I've heard that DOJ is going to continue to reach out to the cities and try to look for waste and stuff. So I want to make sure we want to be conservative, and I know staff wants to and should have a contingency. We should have a buffer, but we have built back our reserves, which we should take into account. But I just want to throw that out there because everything I'm hearing, that's still going to be a thing
That's a
going
good
forward.
point. Great point.
What was the line item that we haven't used more than 60% of?
No, I'm just saying in general, and I'm not gonna lie, I have not finished going through every line item of the budget report yet. But it just in general, if something that, and I'm talking about things we kind of regularly budget for every year. Obviously, there's always going to be miscellaneous items every year, but kind of the standard ones that every single year we budget for. Like, if there's a trend and we haven't used, I don't know. I'm just saying 60%. Like, maybe just reduce that line item, because I think we just want to make sure that if we're going to keep having this Doge oversight, that we are really, taking a look at every line item and making sure that we don't have any waste. I'm not suggesting there's waste. I'm just saying it's real and it's happening from everything I've been hearing. It's not going away anytime soon. Anything else?
I have no more comments.
Any public comment? Marcia?
I'm so glad you mentioned Remembrance Park, because I was gonna bring it up too. I think it's a very good idea to let it be, no one's a bigger booster for Remembrance than I am, you know that. But on phase 2, I was looking at it, and it really doesn't add that much value. There's no parking, it's just a bunch of trees. It'll be beautiful, I'm not saying it won't be, but I think it might be wise to kind of table that for a year and see what the traffic is once we get the park going and what our numbers look like, and then come back and look at that maybe next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Watkins?
Good evening, everyone. I would agree with Marcia. We've been all about Remembrance Park, but it might be interesting to see how it's used once this phase is done, and it's going to be beautiful. But it is trial and error over there. Is not a lot of parking, to see if you get pedestrian traffic with it, kind of how it's used, and maybe it might even influence what you do with that 1.3 million in the next phase. The other thing I would just like to offer, back in my day, we did reduce the millage rate. And when we did it, Jody Forsyth, who was our financial director, just about passed out that night when we did it. And it was at a time that everything was down. As I recollect, it was like 07 or 08, something like that. And we did have, at that time, Futures Building was affectionately known around here as the Pink Elephant. It had stood for a long time. Oh, it's coming, it's going to be something. Well, it never did happen. So you really have to be careful. And you can see where your expenses are going to go up with salaries and other, right? And I think a lot of this building phase is going to quell. It has to. We're built out. We're doing a lot of replacement, but that's going to be defined pretty soon. And you have to really look down the road, which maybe we didn't do a very good job of at the time, to see 10, 15 years down. Any reduction in the millage rate has quite an effect, even if you think it's not much. It does. And the village, fortunately, if you tell people you're going to save $11 here or $50 here, it's not the impact that it might have in another municipality. And I think it's another thing that you just need to watch what's going on. We're kind of in an uncertain time on a lot of levels right now, and I would just caution you to hold tight and see what's going on, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other council comments, questions, discussion?
None.
Okay, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.